Whew. So, hello there. A little bit of a different episode today. Um, I want to today talk a little bit about trance. So, that is a practice that, I do almost daily, and been doing that for about 7, 8 years or now, I think. I don't think this is particularly unique, trancing, but I thought I'd just maybe offer maybe some frameworks for how I understand trance, and then also maybe some like simple exercise that helps you develop your trance practice based on my own experience. So, yeah. Hold on, just gonna close the window. Okay. So there, I'm back. Yeah. So trance practice. Whew, even just thinking about it, those words just make my arms go, what? So, what is trance? Trance is, I think, the most simple way to describe it as a kind of. I'm going to use like a pretty common sense definition. So, trance to me is kind of like an intentional, mindful dream state. So you are in a dream state, but there is this kind of like uh, a baseline nervous system regulation and kind of opening up our sensory system to um, the dream layer of reality. So that's a little bit underneath our consensus reality, accessing the unconscious, subconscious, and also sensing into what is emergent from that place. And, yeah, so a lot of the times, when you have like a guided meditation, that's like I guess you might say that's like a guided trance. You're having a dream experience that's actually the elements are being populated by another person. But the type of trance work that I enjoy is actually really improvisational and comes from emergently from within. And that's actually something that more and more me and a few colleagues, and especially my colleague Dare Sohei, we've been talking about different ways of trancing, different ways to understand it, and what is the skill that comes from trance. So, what we have been talking about it, or they introduced me even to the idea, is like trance is a kind of jazz. So it's a kind of music. It's an improvised music, and it has a kind of uh, musicality. So there's rhythm, there's amplitude, there's feeling, and that's kind of like what the practice is. And the way we discussed it is like, oh, can you when you play your trance, like, can you play better trances? Can you play better music? Can you play better solos? And when we say better, is it kind of like um yeah, it's interesting to talk about skill level, but there is such a thing as skill level of like of like a skilled jazz musician plays better than an unskilled one at a certain point, right? That becomes very obvious. So that is a real thing, and so that's something we've been talking about. And then also, what a practice I really enjoy, if you've been watching the podcasts or listening to the podcasts, is kind of co-dreaming and co-trancing. So going into trance states with another person, where we're kind of blending our dream worlds together. So, I might imagine like being in a cavernous space, and then the other person starts populating the cavernous space with things, and then I might start interacting with things, like maybe there's crystals or mushrooms or something, and then maybe I'd eat a mushroom or like touch a crystal and something happens. So we're in this co-dreaming space together, that is emergent, and that's something I really really um, enjoy just as like a yeah as a practice, and that unfolds meaning. I've been thinking a lot about also about bringing that kind of co-dreaming as an exercise into the work I do with people. And so looking at like a kind of somatics or animist somatic practice that's a little bit less about me and a person and me facilitating their experience, but actually us kind of dancing together and the person getting an opportunity to exchange in a dance. And really kind of to say that is actually kind of the skill, or at least one of the skills of belonging. And this actually fits into a wider framework of things I've been considering, because I've been always really interested in circle work. So that's kind of like family constellations or world work, process work, or restorative circles. I've always been really interested in that. So kind of works where you maybe get into a circle with a group of peers, and then there's a facilitator, and you in the circles are having an experience that is more expanded than your regular consensus reality. You might feel like you might be asked to, in family constellations you're often asked to play the ancestors or family members of certain people, or an energy like money or something like that. And you access your body and you notice sensations, and you you speak from that place, you act from that place, and you might process and digest things in the collective field. So it's kind of a metabolization through this group co-dreaming. And I find that to be a really interesting process, because my background for somatics actually first comes from street dance, where getting into a circle and one person improvising and then coming out, another person improvising and coming out, is like this regular practice. And so that was my like first introduction to kind of actually group trances. So that I would say that's like my first introduction, because dancing is a type of trance. And uh exchanging energy. So that's my first experience of emergent trance, collective trance. And so through my training in somatics and expressive arts and things like that, I've always been interested in getting back to that. And also I've noticed, I'm not trained in constellations or process work, but noticing in these modalities where there's a circle work that is about emergent voices and emergent actions, emergent feelings, emergent sensations, um, these circle works that work with that. I've been interested in like, hey, so what if there was less kind of facilitation? What if it was more like we understood that there is always a circle, or there can always be an emergent circle, and you are part of the skill is to recognize, oh, there's a circle starting to happen. Right? So that's one of the things you had, one of the first skills. But we yeah, so like let's say like it's same if you're dancing at a nightclub, you're like, you're starting to feel out your moves, and then the people look around you and you're like, oh, hey, look, you're doing something, and then a circle starts opening for you to expand in. And so that's something that's very interesting to me as a part of like collective processes, where you can feel somebody, oh, you're going into a trance, you're speaking from trance, you're making poetry, you're making music or dancing from that place. Let's give you room to expand, and then we'll witness you, and also we might play with inside of your trance together, and trance together and create this immersion metabolic environment where all these energies from the collective field are coming in and metabolizing together. So I find that really like really interesting. And I just thought about it in one ways to think about it is like, if you're on the periphery of this kind of circle, your role is to kind of be the caregiver adult, and this is not binary. I think I just thought of this is just a riff. And if you're in the middle of a circle, you're like the child being witnessed, and so there's like a child caregiver dynamic in the circle that is created. um, but of course, it's like witness player, uh, adult child, or parent child, right? Witness player, caregiver child. And it's not like those roles. It's not like the player inside is totally child. They have it's like a melange, right? But I don't know. Anyways, thought I'd bring it out because it's enjoyable to think about. But yes, what I find possibly quite interesting is to think about, okay, so there's all these modalities require facilitation, and something I've been frustrated about is when we talk about restorative justice and things like that. I started noticing like it always comes into like then you need a facilitator, you need somebody to facilitate the circle, you need somebody to hold the space, um and and then like if you want to do a circle, like yeah, like there's energy that the facilitator has to put in, and is there a compensation? While usually in a community a lot of time there's no understanding of even what the kind of system is, like an indigenous kind of healing circle. um and also the facilitator makes very little money off of it, they can't live off of it, but it's a huge piece of community work. And I've been noticing the kind of distortions and things that happen because there's not an availability of money. There's not a understanding of the kind of skills and roles that it takes to hold a circle. So I've been thinking about this, and I was thinking about this in the context of like street dance, and looking at it going like, maybe there's actually a little bit of a different way to arrange this, and that is to say, instead of there being a facilitator, what if it was just understood as a part of your belonging to a community or a culture that this is a skill that you work on. So you are entering into a community or a culture, and part of your initiation process is to have this skill of being able to be in your own trance, and you're not needing so much outside attention. You can actually facilitate your own trance, just like kind of like if you go to a nightclub, and a lot of black and brown spaces are the places where I've danced and traveled in. So there are certain like moves and dances that people share, and also cultural rituals. Like I said, if you're feeling the music and you're starting to expand your movement, usually then a circle starts to open because everybody understands that cultural form. They like start to shape and then like cheer you on. They're like, eh, 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 wow, bam, bam. Like there's like energy that comes from the circle, and the person's like wiling out in the middle. And but that's actually a cultural learning. That's a cultural kind of I wouldn't go so far as to make it as rigid as to say that it's protocol, but it's a kind of I guess it is a kind of protocol, but it's like an unspoken, unwritten, oral understanding. But it also initiates into the culture, because there's a difference between somebody who knows how to participate in that ritual and a person who doesn't. And I'm thinking a little bit similarly about like trance, and improvised group trance is actually a kind of way of like kind of signifying belonging. So your ability to go into trance states, as a kind, yeah, together as a kind of way of being within a culture. And the reason why this is important, because when we go into these trance states, it helps us kind of metabolize things that are um, underneath the surface in an honest way. And I think there's different skills and different levels of trance. So we're not going to go into like the really big stuff, but your ability to digest, with your peers or even with yourself, yeah, it just feels good. Just say that, like, maybe that's a baseline skill, and it's even a skill that we can track. It's even a skill that, oh, there's some people who are really good at this, and there's some people who are like working on it, and there's some people who don't even understand what's happening, right? So this has been a quite interesting, yeah, framing to me. And I feel like this kind of practice also may contain a lot of answers about, emergence, because there's so much conversation about emergence and cultural rejuvenation. But when I think about it, it's like, yeah, every person being able to kind of like take care of their own poo, and if there's excess poo, like, to digest, or to, things to digest and make poo, like, you have a group of people that you do it with, right? So this is like kind of like this somatics of togetherness I've been really thinking about, or an animism of togetherness even. And this is also like, my questions about eroticism come in too, because obviously when you are doing something together in your body, that is an erotic thing. And then, of course, that gets into the erotic sexual thing. So it's all there. It is all there. And whoa, when I say that, whew, my shoulders do something. My arms want to reach the sky. And oh, I feel like a tree. I feel like a tree, embodying the tree with my arms, spreading over my fingers. And the fingers receive the light of the sun, and there's little fish that the light becomes, and it swims all the way down my arms into my heart, and from there there's like a waterfall that's very having a golden waterfall into my belly cauldron, and then it pulls into a snake with a coil. And then there's more opaqueness in my legs. There's just kind of like a darkness that I can't see through, which is neither good nor bad, but there's some frozenness. So the emotion I pick up is fear. And the fear wants to rattle around. Let the fear become sensation again. It's just a vibration. Fear is just a sensation in the end. A burp comes. And the burp feels like kind of like when a squid like puts out black ink into the water. Poof. And the ink turns into flowers. And the yawn comes. And the yawn brings these flowers, black purple flowers, kind of like Prince, out into the space in front, and blossoms as I open my arms. And now my legs feel like they're vibrant and alive, like they're floral or part of a flower or like part of a strong root system. And when I say that root system, I get a little bit of like scratchy or catchy feeling in my left groin. And then I'm just gonna say, sometimes there's rocks in the ground that roots have to move around, and that's just life. And the rock became a skull. It's a skull, and there's all these worms and other bugs inside. And as I imagine the bugs crawling out of the skull, I can feel more lymph and blood flow in my left groin. A sigh comes out, and I don't know what the creatures are coming out of my mouth when I sigh, but it's like like a weird mushroom / bird, a kind of chimera like being. They feel a bit queer. They're not clear about who they are. A jaw relaxes. Big flower, big yawn coming out of my mouth like a sunflower. Like a whole animal fell out of my mouth and is now wandering around the space and flashing my neck around to try to catch it spinning around me. I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna chase it around a little bit. Where are you? Where are you? Chasing it around. And it's slowing down. Slowing down. Oh, it's a little snake again. But it feels safe to touch. Pick up the snake. It's turned very kind and docile. And let it enter my mouth. Breathing the snake down, or digesting the snake all the way down my digestive tract. Tracing my stomach, intestines, pooling in my gut, and becomes my phallus, and from my phallus, there's gentle water that whooshes out. Wow. Arch my back, touch the water. And from the water, there's all these plants that start growing, and they're growing through me, they're growing all over me. Oh. Plants even growing from underneath my nails. I can feel the energy of them growing through me, ripple through. One big one growing from my sacrum, so I'm just gonna take a bowing position to let it grow fully. And I might be quiet for about a minute or two just to let that happen. So I'm feeling a lot more wobbly, warm digestion feeling in my belly. That's where I feel like this big plant coming out of my sacrum is connected to. I can feel the roots from my belly just growing through my whole body and breaking my skin. And I can feel that I can feel the imagination ripple through my body, creating waves, So when I trance, I um, take monitor of what, it's not just an image based trance, it's a somatic trance. I don't think that's special or anything, but to allow my track my body sensation, not emotion necessarily. If I get to emotion, I actually usually peel back and go back into sensation, and it's because I feel like that's the most out of all the normal stages or states of awareness, sensation is the most basic one, and then there's also emergence, which we've been talking as a kind of pre sixth sense or something like that, emergence. So that is here too, obviously. Yeah. But allowing the image to be make like have, it's like it's moving sensation, it's moving energy in the body. Usually I feel it like a wave, and the wave amplitudes can be very big, like whoa whoa whoa, or very like small, like like or something like that if I describe it, or like whoa 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 if I describe musically. Yeah, and I always find exhalations always interesting during a trance state. Burps, farts, like digestive sounds. I feel like those are all, like kind of signs that something good is happening, generally speaking. And sometimes it could be rough. One of the first times I was practicing this was a long time ago, maybe 6 years ago. I had an image of like a white flower coming out of my solar plexus sternum. Uh, and I was just there, like just watching this white flower in my mind's eye coming out of my sternum, and it was kind of vibrating things in my chest and stuff. And then I passed out. I went to sleep for about an hour, and then when I woke up, all of a sudden I needed to go to the bathroom, and I purged, and it wasn't like crazy vomiting, but it was just like kind of this bio-like substance that came out of me. And so I was like, whoa, okay, this is a real thing. And it didn't feel too unpleasant, but just to say that is a thing. Exfoliations are a thing. Um, but yeah, uh, so I'm just gonna go back into let the plant come out of my sacrum and just be here for a minute. And it's interesting because I did that. I felt a little squirrel come out of the back of my head, and they were like wiggling around, and then like just disappearing, like doing the squirrel thing, like and disappearing. Mm-hmm. And I continue to see images leaving, little creatures leaving my body, but I won't overly narrate it. But it's just it also accompanies sensation. Hmm. I feel a bit self-conscious because this is a podcast, and apparently people are listening. I'd probably usually, um, you know what? I'm gonna do the down sequence. I'm gonna let myself have like a full like reset, but I'm just gonna pause the recording because it's gonna be really boring if you stick around. Whew. Hmm. Whoa. Okay. Um. I'm a lot more mellow now. But yeah, that was a spontaneous trance. Um, it doesn't have a lot of meaning. It's for me that is more of a like an exercise in just letting our minds wander. I do have a certain container for it though, which is to kind of let for that like letting things stay in the natural world. And even though that was really fast, like the basic premise of the way I practiced that, at first it was just a lot of like breathing into a body part, just choosing a random body part and be like, oh. And actually, a good place where I'd start often with the belly, because that's the place where a lot of us are dissociated from and need a little bit of help with. That's a positive place. But yeah, I'm breathing into a place in the body, and then just letting the breath, imagining the breath as a kind of energy, and then just seeing what kind of being from the natural world presents us. So like an ancestor, right? Like a deep ancestor. So let's say, and then let the body allow itself to move itself. So you feel this sensation that comes along with the image. So you're breathing in, and then you become like maybe it becomes like a tadpole. And then when you see the tadpole, imagine it. You'll there would be a movement that comes along with it that is just naturally emergent from the image and that follows its sensation. So you just keep playing with that movement until the image changes. So maybe the tadpole then morphs into something else and becomes like a, I don't know, like a plant that moves down the arm, and then that might have a certain movement that's like, yeah, plant leaves, and then but at the same time, you're also tracking that, like, the image that you saw, like moving through you, like the plant. There's an energetic trace in your body that you can sense. So there's like ripples and stuff you're sensing. So that's one way of yeah, connecting. So that is one way. So yeah, you might try that out. And it's pretty overall, I think, um, pretty, for me, it's been a pretty relaxing thing to do, as although, yeah, I don't know if that would be the same for everybody. But you can also set parameters for your trance in like a larger algorithmic way. It's like, yeah, I'm going to keep this within this bounds today. And then you might hit that edge where, like, ooh, something kind of more like that's transgressive for me wants to emerge. Like, I've definitely had trances where I like, oh, like I'm a tiger or something like that. And then all of a sudden I see um like I see something that, or that, like, I want to eat and harm, like just be like raw. And the important thing is just to remember, this is just like the dream world. And so you may allow yourself to do that if you feel like that is within your threshold, to manage that as an experience. I definitely usually go into the thing, but not everybody. Everybody's all at different levels of being able to handle psychic states, I guess. So, your mileage may vary. But the other thing too that I've been trying to understand and trying to learn, with the help of Dare and Larissa Call, is to not treat. So let's say you have a trance, but you're not necessarily then stepping out of the trance and going like, oh my god, there's all this meaning, I saw this person, I saw that person, or I had this thing and this animal came to me. It's like da da da, and it's like, whoa, like, yes, there's synchronicity, there's all these unconscious things that bring patterns that kind of get woven in our lives. But to treat them also as like passing notes and a piece of solo music improvised, um like if a musician is playing, that's kind of like Day in the Life Beatles. Like Grant Green, who's a great jazz guitarist, has a version, so I'm kind of riffing off that. But anyway, so like you're not like worrying about the note you made like 12 phrases ago or something. Does that make sense? You're like, yes, it's a beautiful thing, but if you're not wanting to necessarily hyperfixate on it, like you're not trying to. If you hyperfixate on what happened, your music is gonna get a little bit jumbled, or um, even everything that, let's say, yeah, in your trance comes like a grandmother that you have, or like something very literal comes into it. Just remember, I think, there's also something that somebody who I'm working with as my counselor pointed out, is that, like, the dreams that you have in dream states are still material. So they're still material. And I think that's interesting, because that means, like, um even in your dream, those dream beings that you dreamed can actually have subdream beings and subdream beings and subdream beings that reveal more and more of the underlayers. So just because like your grandmother appeared doesn't mean your grandmother appeared to you necessarily. They could have, but they also might not have. The image just might be a representative of somebody else. So let's say grandmother's image might be for let's say, is just a representative, maybe of the crone as an archetype, like a witchy crone archetype. But maybe inside the crone you break it up too again, and then there's like death, and womb, like and like more primordial beings, and then you break that up, and then there's another dream underneath, like, and there's dreams and dreams and dreams underneath, that you can keep going to. Although when you get down to it, like death is a pretty big one. That's usually awaiting you at the end. Let's just be real. But just to say, like, the things that we dream, like, we don't have, in our trance states, we don't have to overly attach them to the point that, because they're ultimately dreams, and there's dreams of dreams underneath and dreams of dreams underneath. That's kind of how I understand it. Of course, we can go into more complex conversations about metaphysics of consciousness and what are dreams, and is our waking life a dream? Kind of yes, kind of yes. It's like a very dense dream in a way. But let's, yeah, that gets very complicated very quickly. I feel like I need other people to, like, I'm riffing with, to really talk about that. But, well, let me see what I can say. Well, somebody actually, yeah, the person who I'm working with, their name is Maraya Karena, and they're a process worker person. And they said, like, actually in their frame, like, let's say even things that that happen kind of randomly in your life, even like, let's say, I'm walking down the street, and then like a water bucket like blasts water on top of me. That's still, in some of their framings, like, that's something that's still part of the dream, like, or like kind of like saying there's a message coming into you. You need more water in you. You need more waterness. So you actually may work with water as a being. And often a lot of these experiences that come is partially because you haven't integrated something, so the energy is kind of like coming to you. It's an interesting frame. I don't know how we totally square and work that out with the realities of, let's say, like systemic oppression and stuff. I feel like it gets into, we have to probably have a little bit more complex frame to digest, but it's just really interesting here. So it's like kind of like, okay, yeah. I'm not like against it. I just think there just needs to be a little bit more digestion. I'm not saying that she hasn't done that, but in myself, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. I haven't fully crunched on it yet, but it makes me think about, like, how subtle, and like, how subtle. Now, so when we understand that there's like a, what we call a cultural nervous system, right? Like, that our bodies interlink and to create this larger nervous system we're all part of. I would definitely say, like, most human interactions, the things that we're doing unconsciously is moved by the dreaming of this larger cultural nervous system. Just kind of like simple things like, you were supposed to meet somebody that day and didn't get to hang out. They called in with a headache, but maybe the thing you were supposed to talk about was related to the thing that was related to the headache. Like, maybe the headache is related to some like intergenerational trauma that has to do with their grandmother's lineage. And you had maybe kind of trance about a grandmother today that you're really into talking to that person about, but the person maybe is like in like a state where, like, oh, that feels too much, like unconsciously, right? Like, oh, I don't want to cross that threshold to consider this thing. So the phenomenon on the consensus reality level is like, I have a headache, but actually it's their family lineage kind of going like, we're not quite ready for you to have that encounter yet, or we're afraid. So, like, preventing that encounter from happening, so it looks like a headache, right? So this is like kind of how the cultural nervous system is always intervening with us. And then so when we go into these trance dreaming states, we we get to access a part of our sensory system that is a little bit more sensitive to these kind of like energies moving in our culture all the time, in our relationships all the time. And being able to play in an improvised way like helps us digest these energies, and metabolize them, or even like play with them erotically, and that could have a very big definition, but um, together in a dance or something. Like, this is kind of the understanding I have. And when I mentioned like the person who gets a headache with the grandmother and da da da, like, this means that also this is something that like Larissa really pointed out to me, is that like it's one of our problems in modernity is we really don't think about like what happens if we reorganize our lives based on this animist principle that everything is being and all beings are interrelated. If we just really base it on that, because then you start to and they were like, it's a kind of a problem that we don't do that, and I'm like, yeah, that's interesting, because it is like very real, that our understandings of how we go about day to day is not based on this. Our consensus reality doesn't integrate the dream world or the energetic world. And so I think more of us getting acquainted with trancing as a skill, there's more integration, this understanding of like, oh, the consensus reality that we're in is also the dream world and is also the energy world, right? These are all like all together and they interact with each other, no doubt, no doubt. And the more we can all see that, it's like the more we understand, like, oh, this is the dance that we're in together. This whole world is a nightclub. And sometimes in nightclubs there's brawls because people don't know how to pay attention to the music. So the trance is a way we pay attention to the music. So, and our goal is to play better music together, or more funky music, or more enjoyable music together. Yeah. So blessings. That's a little bit just sharing of how I practice. I mean, it's just the way I do it. And today I just showed a little bit of what I do, which is like imagining these like really older ancestors, like animals and plants and stuff in my body. So it's a somatic trance. So there's a not just in my vision. I'm constantly referring back to my body and going, oh, this image of something in my body here. Oh, it feels warm. I'm tracking sensation all the time. So it's not just an image based thing. It's referring back and forth, and I think this actually has quite important consequences when we're doing ancestral healing, other types of work that includes visions. But yeah, I just use that kind of exercise as a kind of primer for myself, and do some kind of version of that probably every night before I go to sleep, to be honest. And so it's at least once a day, and sometimes it's like sometimes I go for 5 hours. I'm in that kind of trance state, not always moving around because that's a lot, but just even sensing, just even being like, I can feel it. I can feel like a shark in my liver who's angry, wants to thrash around, and my body does this thrashing a little bit. And then once that's done, there might be like like the blood that's coming out of the shark's mouth might turn into something that's like more like gentle and floral and flowers floating on water, and that would bring another kind of sensation. But so image and sensation, not going too much into thought. I definitely do thought-based trances, and I'm like, I don't know, those, yeah, I'm still trying to get my handle on those, and definitely not as, yeah, and also not so much emotion. I'm not trying to go through a lot of yeah, I find the basic trance that I do is trying to digest things on a more like sensation and image level, and staying out of the story of the emotions and the thoughts a bit. So personally, I kind of recommend that as a way to work with things. And yep. So that's it. So That's all I gotta say for today. And thank you very much for listening to this very weird podcast. Bye.